Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you guys had a wonderful holiday and your new year has been fantastic. I know it's kind of the end of the month right now, kind of towards the end of January, but I wanted to kind of make an end of year recap video and channel update video. I know it's been half a year-ish, 6 to 7 months since I've last released content on my channel. And so I kind of wanted to do this style of video in order to kind of make a simple project that I can actually ease myself back into when it comes to content creation. So this is going to be kind of it's going to be an update video, but I also want to talk about a lot of games that I've been playing, any more free form, just kind of raw format. This is not going to be too edited too much. You might even notice that there's gameplay footage over top of almost everything, Pokemon footage at that. I decided instead of just letting you guys see my dumb face in front of the camera for about an hour, you guys can see some Pokemon footage. But I also decided to input footage from other games when they showed up into the discussion. But for the most part, my random ramblings are going to be over top of some of the Pokemon footage that I captured while I was streaming the game over the past couple of months. I haven't streamed it a whole bunch, but I did stream it 2 or 3 times. I had a lot of fun with it, and I kind of really enjoyed it, so I do plan on streaming it more, as well as other games in the future. I've been really eyeballing that One Piece game, so I might stream that in the future as well. But yeah, so this is going to be a little update for the channel, as well as just kind of giving you guys a little bit of kind of my thoughts and opinions on games that I've played in the past year. Of course, I played Elden Ring. I have some thoughts on that. My last video was actually about Elden Ring, so you had a little bit of content from it. But this is going to kind of share my overarching thoughts on it. I also ended up playing Sekiro. I played a game called Unsighted that I want to talk about, and then I might throw in a little bit of anime information for the random stuff that I was watching this year and whatnot. So we're just kind of, making a video for myself. Obviously one might ask, who cares? You're just a random person on the internet. Well, I enjoy expressing myself and trying to be a little bit creative. Obviously, this is a lot less kind of formal of a video. It's more just me kind of enjoying, talking to myself. But, maybe somebody will enjoy it. Maybe somebody will take something from it. Who knows? So all the more reason, if anybody enjoys it, then that's enough reason for me. I don't really care. And this is also just a personal thing for myself, because I want to make sure, I want to be creative and express myself in a way. And just because it might not do well or perform well, I still think that there is a valid reason to create the video and upload it. This is actually kind of I've been attempting this video multiple times. I was sick over the past couple of weeks, so I was less... I recorded some audio, but I feel like I wasn't feeling as satisfied with it, so I decided to record, and maybe I'll never be satisfied with it, but this is certainly going to be the final attempt as far as I can tell, because I want to get this out. I do want to release the video, and I don't want to just sit here and re-record the audio or the commentary portion of it for like a bajillion times. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to record this, upload it. You'll probably see this towards the kind of middle / between the middle of January and the end of January. And then I'll be working on one of my actual video projects and streaming some more. So this video is going to be kind of like a podcast. This is going to be more audio and audio kind of entertainment than visual entertainment. Of course, like I said, there will be visual stuff. You can watch me play Pokemon and whatever randomness shows up there. But for the most part, this video is going to be designed in a way that you can put it away, push it in a different tab, have it on the background and listen to it while you're doing something else, gaming, cleaning, whatever it might be. And so that's kind of the goal here, just to That is something that I've been looking to do a bit more. Kind of something that I'm interested in is some like podcasty style content. So this is going to be like that first little attempt at it, see how it goes. But yeah, long story short, if you don't want to watch, you can still listen and get the majority of the content here. So without further ado, let's jump into the first bit of this video, and that is the content update, or the channel update, I mean. So essentially, what I am going to start working on for moving forward with this channel in particular is going to be two types of videos, two primary types of videos. So the first one is going to be kind of long form video projects that take the form of usually a video essay or a game review. So basically what that means is like, I want these to be like kind of feature length, 45 minutes plus. I want to put a lot of work into them. I want to make them pretty creative. I want to start working on kind of fine tuning my own personal and unique video making style. Sometimes when it comes to artistic endeavors, you know, art is a very free space. There's so much you could do. There's literally infinite possibilities. And so a lot of times when you're going into something that you're unfamiliar with, you take inspiration from multiple locations. You draw inspiration from different creators that you enjoy watching yourself. Whether this be artistic endeavors or like drawing or painting endeavors, you know, video creation, movie making, whatever it might be, you're probably going to take inspiration from other people. And therefore your early projects are going to start looking like projects from those inspirations that you, or from those kind of people that you drew inspiration from. Like, so if you drew inspiration from, I don't know, the people who made One Piece, your art might look like One Piece for a while. You know, you're going to have a similar art style until you eventually kind of ease into your own personalized style. And I think that's going to be true for myself. I've been working on video projects for the past couple of years, editing and stuff. I'm slowly kind of easing myself into personal projects or personal styles. So like I'm somewhat there in terms of like a personal style, but I still have a long ways to go in my opinion. And now that I'm kind of doing a bit more focusing on the types of videos that I want to make, I think that's going to be a little bit, it's going to take a few more projects before I kind of hit that sweet spot. So essentially, the reason I kind of bring that up is because Joseph Anderson is a pretty big inspiration for some of my content moving forward, right? When I say long form feature length video projects, that's kind of the idea that you can imagine is someone like Joseph Anderson. He's no longer the only one that you can pretty much rely on. Like I've seen so many like hour-long plus kind of analysis of games or essay content. So like it's no longer just Joseph Anderson, but he's kind of the one like that immediately pops into my head when I think of some kind of example to provide for what I might be doing going forward. And so yeah, like I might notice some similarities, but I definitely have some things of my own that I would like to kind of implement. Obviously, I'm not going to do a crazy 7-hour long Witcher video. Like that's Joseph. He can do his own thing. You know, that's all on him. I don't plan on doing anything that wild or crazy. But I want to make the videos longer. I want them to be hour plus long in length for the most part. Like I'm basically not going to restrict myself anymore. You know, if I have a video that's shorter, like that's possible. You know, like maybe it doesn't need to be an hour long. But if there is a lot of things that I want to break down and analyze in a particular video or if like there's a lot of things I want to sit down and break down and analyze for like a particular topic or a particular game, I don't want to restrict myself to being like, you need to be super, you know, short form videos. A lot of my content, I was forcing myself to be 30 minutes and less. And so I want to make sure that that is no longer a restriction I'm implementing on myself. I don't intend to make like 8-hour videos or like 3-hour videos, but at the same time, I want to give myself the opportunity to experiment a bit with longer form content. So video essays and game reviews are going to be kind of the norm for my content moving forward, and different topics that are going to show up and whatnot. So yeah, like that's kind of the main focus, but it's not going to be the only focus. I'm also going to include a second type of video, and that is going to be the video styles that you're listening to or watching right now. And that is kind of free form, raw opinion slash, kind of takes on various games that I am playing that do not warrant an entire video. A good example is over the course of the summer. I'm not going to talk about it a ton in this video because honestly, it's not too important, but I played Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge with my good friend over the summer of last year, and it was a really fun game. I had a blast playing it. I definitely recommend it, especially if you do have a handful of friends that you can play it with. Very chaotic, very fun to just kind of sit down and, blast out a bunch of levels. And so like that's a small beat 'em up game. Like I'd have to really, really, really stretch a lot of content to make that game by itself like cover an hour some video or whatever. And so I don't really like, that's a game that I just want to do unfiltered raw thoughts on, like I am doing right here right now. And so if I play a handful of games and none of them really kind of catch my interest enough to want to create a video for, I want to be able to sit down, record a bit of raw footage or record a bit of unfiltered, unscripted takes like I'm doing now, and just kind of talk about some of those games. And so that's kind of the second style of video, kind of more of a podcasty, unscripted, just discussion of games that I'm playing. Maybe it leads into something as I ramble on, but for the most part, I don't really intend to do that. Maybe if this style of video picks up, I can start like bringing on guests for certain things or something. I don't know, maybe turn it into a real podcast. But for now, it's just going to be these like fun little videos where I discuss random things. So yeah, those are the two primary types of videos. I'm not constraining myself to a style, and I'm just going to have like this focus on like really sitting down and like figuring out different types of content that I want to make, and not really forcing myself to adhere to any type of like random requirements that I might arbitrarily make because of like YouTube algorithm stuff or whatever. I'm just going to make the videos that I want to make. If they do well, they do well. If not, they don't. But I want to make sure that I'm trying to fit my own style. I want to add, more narrative to my videos. I want to add more cinematography to my videos. And I want to make them very appealing and very engaging. I've always had this kind of I really always admire filmmaking. And I want to see if I can like do more with what with what I've got, and if that makes my videos longer, that makes them longer. It also kind of fits my schedule as well. Obviously this is not my full-time job. Right now it's kind of more like a hobby, but I have other things in life that I kind of want to work on, right? So I have a kind of part-time / full-time job. It's about 32 hours a week, but I also have other life things that I have that are important to me. I want to start, I've been working out more and starting to work out and like eat healthy. So I want to spend time on, going to the gym and all of that such. I also have, a lot of projects with friends and time spent with friends that are important to me. And just a lot of things in life that I, also have priorities for. Therefore, not all of that turns into making YouTube content. Maybe someday, maybe on like one of my days off, I'm working out and like doing other stuff. And then maybe another day off, then I can start working on YouTube. And that means I don't always sit down and just like spam out YouTube content and burn myself out. So, and especially since I'm also streaming again and kind of trying to put streaming back on, I want to give myself the appropriate amount of time to work on all of these different things and not burn myself out from any one of them. And also give myself the opportunity to, take it easy a little bit. Life is, enjoy life. So I think that's kind of the direction I want to take going forward. I will still make potential Yu-Gi-Oh videos, so I'll leave that playlist up just in case I randomly get back into Master Duel. I'll also leave up the YouTube guides, so the game guides. Right now, the only two significant ones are the Duel Links Beginner's Guide and the Neo 2 Beginner's Guide. Those two I put a lot of work into, and so I'm really proud of those. I made like a sort of Elden Ring guide and a whatnot, but those are the two that I put a lot of effort into. And if there's another game coming forward, or if there's another game coming up that I'm really passionate about and want to give people a kind of a head start in that game because it's complicated or something and the tutorials aren't that great, I want to leave that space, that possibility space open to me as a creator to make that kind of content. A good example is in about, what was it? I think it's March. I think in March there's a game called Wolong coming out. It is another game created by Team Ninja, the guys who created Neo 2. Really happy, or really looking forward to that game. Me and my friends are super excited about it. We're totally going to be like co-oping the hell out of it and playing it quite a lot. But in very Team Ninja fashion, it looks like there can be, it's a very combat-centered game. There's a lot of in-depth combat mechanics. And so if it turns out that it's a hard game to get into because those mechanics are not very well thought out, or those mechanics are not very well, not thought out, but the mechanics are not very well discussed or given to you, then I want to potentially make a video for it, given another, new player guide for Wolong so that people can have those mechanics explained in a very concise and efficient fashion. So those, the video game guides are also possibility space. And then, I don't know, maybe some gameplay videos, who knows? Maybe I'll have like a fifth random thing if people want my stream content on YouTube. But that's probably unlikely, so I'm not really going to worry about it. So yeah, that's the channel update. I know it took a little bit, so whatever. Obviously, I probably should have mentioned this at the start of the video, but timestamps for different content pieces are going to be in the description. So if you want to skip all of the boring, YouTube update stuff, then go ahead. If you did watch the YouTube update stuff, I really, really appreciate it. So please, I do really appreciate you sticking around and being interested in the content that I might start there, that I'll be producing. And it means quite a lot to me as a creator for you to have that interest. Of course, all of this stuff is, if you want to be informed of all of this stuff, subscribing and bell notifications your best friend. None of these are going to be scheduled uploads. They're just going to happen. So if you're wondering where videos might be, I'm not going to leave myself. I've been trying to do a monthly upload schedule before I took this big long break, which I'll mention here in a second. But I took the big long break and took a big hiatus. So I'll try to keep the monthly uploads as much as I can, probably filled with this type of video that I'm doing now. But like I said, I'm not going to schedule that upload at all. Just try to do it every month. So if you want to know when the videos get released, bell notifications your best friend. And of course, typical YouTube stuff. If you liked it, you liked it. Go like it down below. All right, with all of that kind of out of the way, real quick, I'll just mention the hiatus was mostly due to just a lot of personal things happening. I really went through, I was going through a lot of emotions, and I wanted to give myself that opportunity to kind of just kind of recover from the emotional stuff that I was going through and allow myself the opportunity to kind of work through those emotions and not force myself into anything. I feel like if I would have forced myself to make videos, it might have been subpar content because my headspace just wasn't in the proper spot for that kind of thing. All right, with all of that kind of done, let's go ahead and jump into the games, the actual content of today's video. We're going to talk about a few games that I played throughout the summer or throughout the year. I'll share with you what my game of the year was as well, and all of that stuff. So essentially, I just want to talk about games and have a good time. So that's kind of what we're going to do. Share my opinions on various games, maybe some hot takes, and kind of go from there. So the first game that I played this year was called Lost Ark. It is a over the top. I mean, I guess it's kind of over the top. It is a top-down MMO. Very takes a lot of inspiration from action RPGs like Diablo. What was it? Isometric. There we go. Isometric action RPGs like Diablo, Path of Exile, those types of games. But in my opinion, I feel like they capture a lot of the like the combat is a lot more fun to me than those previously mentioned games for the most part. You know, in like kind of generally speaking. So essentially, a lot of the game, you know, it's an MMO, so there's a lot of MMO-y tropes. You know, you just kind of run through locations, clear questing or do questing, all of that kind of stuff. Like, you're not really going to get too much. You're not going to get, you know, super top tier, you know, engaging kind of storylines or anything like that. The story is, you know, generic and fun, but it's very memeable. So me and my friends did have a lot of time meming the storyline. But essentially, it's just kind of your typical MMO experience. I really enjoyed the art style and the locations and the level design, just to name like those few kind of hit spots. I really think that those were some of the highlights for me when it came to playing Lost Ark. The game, like, the design of the locations that you're exploring is pretty solid. I mean, there's a couple of generic ones that's like, hey, you're running through a random town, here's a farm, here's a thing. You know, it's kind of sometimes generic, but when they really decide to like go all out with their kind of creativity in designing the locations that you're going to be exploring and fighting through, I thought they were really great. I had a lot of fun. One of my favorite locations was this one island where you help out this like race of people that's tiny. And so it's this kind of race of like little fairy people, like little tiny dudes. And essentially, eventually what you have to do is you have to kind of Alice in Wonderland a potion in order to make yourself tiny. And then now you're exploring the world as if you were one of those tiny creatures. And everything's ginormous, you know, the world around you is huge. Like, you're, instead of riding a horse, your mount becomes a ladybug. I think it's a really fun feature. It was one of my favorite islands to explore. Just a lot of kind of visual pizzazz that made it really enjoyable. I had a lot of fun with that. And the adventure in general, like the adventure experience or like the fantasy of the adventure, I think is really well, it is decently executed. You kind of get this, you know, you're traveling this continent, helping out this guy, and then all of the storylines happen, and then eventually you get your own pirate ship, and now you get to explore the world. And it's very kind of One Piece-y. Obviously nowhere near the levels of like designs and, you know, storytelling of One Piece, but in terms of like kind of that somewhat of that idea, I think there's like, that's kind of what I was imagining in my head, and kind of like where I was like where my head was at while I was playing it. It's just, you get your pirate ship and you get your crew, and you're just like, man, let's go on an adventure. Let's go see what all of this random nonsense has to offer. You get random islands, like the island where you have to go small, and then you get like this other island where you have to participate in some kind of tournament arc, and it's just a blast. Really, it's a lot of fun, and I honestly enjoyed it for what it was. I didn't get to the end of it where it becomes grindy. You know, I know it's one of the notorious, there's a notoriously, you know, it's a notorious end game grind type of game where like once you get past a certain point, you know, the game starts, you know, restricting your progression, and you have to start grinding out dailies and start grinding out raids and dungeons and all of that stuff, and just kind of like, you know, it's a pretty standard, you know, MMO type thing where it's like, oh, well, you hit this certain point, we're gonna slow the game down really really hard until you basically you have to play it nonstop if you want to even progress. So I didn't hit that point of it. So all of this is obviously like, I haven't played the full extent of the game. So like once you hit that point, the game could probably like become really trash. I know my friend did some of the grind, and he was, for the most part, it was like somewhat enjoyable to him, but he was also experiencing that fatigue where it's like, oh my gosh, like I just kind of want to move on to the next level or to the next kind of stage in the grind. So like I said, I haven't experienced it personally, but my friend did. So take my experience with what you will. It's a free game. I think they do fairly well. The fantasy of your character is also well actualized. There's a lot of sound effect and animation clarity that allows you to really kind of get sucked in and absorbed to the combat. So like, for example, my character was this kind of demon hunter character that was able to transform into a demon. And whenever they transformed into the demon, the sound effects were crisp and like really powerful. The animations were really well done to like make you truly feel like you were hitting hard. Like all of the animation work and sound effect work to make the gameplay fantasy realized is I think that's a really high another really high remark that I can give for the game. And I'm not entirely sure if it works the same for other classes. Maybe some classes have that fantasy realized better than others, but from what I played a little bit, I feel like it was, pretty good at that and able to truly get you absorbed into the moment of transforming into the demon or realizing your powerful attacks as the character that you're playing as, and just like kind of get sucked into that fantasy of beating the crap out of everyone. Like I said, it takes inspiration from like Diablo and Path of Exile. So like you're gonna have lots of enemies on screen. You're gonna feel like some kind of just powerful god, just like annihilating foes. One of the small criticisms I would throw at the game from what I played is that the difficulty was not always like you could do the hard mode of dungeons solo even at the level. Like that's not very common in a lot of these games. A lot of times if you're doing solo content, you can't really play it on the harder modes because they generally tend to gate the harder modes for like party work or for like doing party content. But this one, it's like I put it on hard mode. I could probably solo it. Maybe I'd have to like sit up in my chair during a boss fight sometimes, but for the most part it's just like really chill. You just got to know your combos well enough and you're good to go. So kind of the only criticism, and that's something not unique to Lost Ark. Most MMOs unfortunately make the harder content later in the game, and you have to get to that point, which is very frustrating because I know that Lost Ark does get really hard. The raids and the end game dungeons are incredibly difficult. I do know that as a fact. So very unfortunate kind of progression reality of MMOs these days, where it's like, oh, it's just a cakewalk, just enjoy your time until you get to the very end. But honestly, I had a good enough time just playing with friends and experiencing the adventure that it wasn't too bad. So yeah, Lost Ark, I definitely recommend playing it for a little bit. It's free. It's a free to play game. Just boot it up, play it with a friend or two, play through some of the stuff, have a good time, and then you can drop it whenever it gets too tedious and grindy. So the next game is actually going to be Elden Ring. To my friend's disliking, I actually picked it up day one and started playing it. And that was actually the reason that I stopped playing Lost Ark, was because Elden Ring came out. I was playing Lost Ark with my friend, and then I started playing Elden Ring, and I kind of dropped Lost Ark entirely. My friend continued playing Lost Ark, and I was telling him, I was like, I'll come back to Lost Ark, don't worry. Well, that didn't really happen. But so Elden Ring was the next game that came out. I was actually not intending to buy the game immediately. I was going to wait a little bit for this one because at this point I was kind of fatigued by the Dark Souls gameplay loop. The combat loop, to be specific. I was starting to get a little bit fatigued with the Dark Souls combat style. The R1 roll, occasional like special attacks and whatnot. It was getting a little bit tedious, and after I saw a lot of the gameplay from Elden Ring, early access stuff when people were, getting access to the early content, I noticed that it was pretty much the same. Like the combat itself, like if you took a snapshot or like kind of a snippet of Elden Ring combat and showed it to someone, they would just say it's Dark Souls 4. And those criticisms were, and those comparisons are, that's not unique to myself. A lot of people have said that. And I was part of the crew, or part of the camp that was a little bit hopeful, or I was kind of hoping that they would deviate from the typical Dark Souls combat at least a little bit. Like, give me a Bloodborne style deviation from the combat, where you have a lot of kind of unique to Elden Ring features. Like, I can't really think too hard, like just off the top of my head, too many unique to Elden Ring features. Maybe the guard counter, I guess, is probably the only unique thing that I can think of. Because like Ashes of War are just repurposed Dark Souls 3 skills, or whatever they're called in Dark Souls 3. The spirit summons, I guess, but everyone hates those. So I guess you can kind of say that, but like, is that really part of, I mean, like, that's part of your, toolkit and whatnot, but it's still just kind of, some could argue that it's not really, because you're just summoning like phantoms. So like, other than those two, the guard counter and the spirit summons, I can't really pinpoint a lot of like unique to Elden Ring features like I could for Bloodborne, right? So Bloodborne, I can pinpoint a lot of unique to Bloodborne features. The unique weapons, the rally mechanic, the the sidestep dodges when it, for faster gameplay, the guns, there's very little defensive shielding type stuff. It's all guns and parrying. Like, there's a lot of unique features to Bloodborne that you can kind of pinpoint as unique to Bloodborne. So I was really hoping for something to deviate itself like that for Elden Ring. And when I saw that the gameplay wasn't kind of showcasing that, I was like, I might just wait for this one. But I ultimately was like, I got income tax and I was like, you know what, screw it. It's another Souls game. Let's jump in. And I'm kind of glad that I did. I really did enjoy myself with Elden Ring. I think the first playthrough of Elden Ring was definitely one of my favorite gaming experiences. There's certainly a lot of criticisms that I have at the combat, but my solution to that was to not play melee only. I do not like the melee combat in Elden Ring, like melee only combat, pick up a sword, pick up a shield, like pick up a dual swords, or pick up a katana, or pick up a great sword, like just using those exclusively. I do not think the Elden Ring combat system is too enjoyable like that. I would much prefer the way that I approached the game was much more enjoyable for me as a player, and that was using using special Ashes of War a lot and using magic. So I basically spec'd a lot into intelligence and faith and prioritized magic, because I noticed some of the new spells were pretty cool looking, so I was very much interested in picking those up and experimenting with them. So I had like a magic build, skill based, or like a magic build, an ability based build that prioritized a lot of, skill usage and things of that nature. And I had a blast with it. I ran the Knight and Flame Sword for, early game stuff. I ran the, I ran with a lot of the dragon spells, like the Scarlet Rot stuff. And I had a really good time trying to figure out certain locations of the game and figure out how to fight certain bosses. I did use spirit summons, call me a noob, I don't give a shit. It was part of the game. I enjoyed using him. And there was a lot of fights that I felt were really fun to kind of figure out with the spirit summons. And so I used the spirit summons. I really enjoyed them as a mechanic, personally. At some point it became pretty ridiculous, and so like I stopped using I stopped using, like, I let Mimic Tier carry me for a little bit, and then I was like, this is ridiculous, so I stopped using Mimic Tier. But then there was a point where, but in the early game, I think the spirit summons were incredibly fun to use, the early game of the Elden Ring. And so basically there was a couple of things where, I was going to mention this real quick. You're probably seeing footage of me using a modded gameplay. So we'll talk about that in a second. I just wanted to kind of clarify that the version of Elden Ring you're watching is modded, and that's why it's crazy. But anyway, so like the early game with spirit summons was a lot of fun. My most memorable experience actually was fighting the it was fighting the Godslayer in Caelid, or the Dragon Barrows or whatever, the inside of the tower. So you climb up in the tower and you get to the bottom of the tower for, I think it's Radahn's Great Rune. And you can go to the bottom of that tower and fight a Godslayer Apostle. And he's an endgame Godslayer Apostle. He's harder. He's one of the harder ones, harder than the one in the Altus Plateau. And so I went to him early. He was one of my first like difficult bosses. And I was getting my ass whooped. He would one-shot me and like all this other stuff. So I left and came back, and I had this really cool strategy that I was so proud of myself for coming up with. It was a really fun strategy. Essentially what I did was I used the dagger, the bleed dagger. I knew he was weak to bleed, thanks to some messages and some experimentation. But I knew he was weak to bleed, and I also had the Scarlet Rot dragon like head thing. And so the Scarlet Rot dragon head did not leave the boss rotted long enough for me to actually like defeat him. And so what I did like this really cool strat. So I went into the fight and I started the fight with the dagger, the bleed dagger. And so bosses take longer to bleed the more times you proc it. At least I'm pretty sure that's how that works. And so I bled him the first few times. I was doing a lot of attempts at him with just the bleed dagger, and that wasn't going super well after his phase transition. And so I did it this way. After I used the bleed dagger immediately, during the phase transition, I summoned one of my spirit ashes. I summoned specifically the archer guy from the Siofria River or whatever. They use the giant arrows and they're pretty annoying to traverse past. So I summoned that guy, ran to the other side of the room. I ran to the fog door, or like the entrance of the room, summoned that guy, ran past the phase transition into the other side of the room, and then once the boss aggroed the spirit ashes, I charged a fully charged Scarlet Rot Breath from the Dragon Covenant and allowed that to Scarlet Rot the boss, and then I continued fighting the boss with the dagger. And so like that was the perfect strategy for me, because the Scarlet Rot didn't last long enough if I started the fight with it, and the bleed dagger eventually wore out its use because it would take too long to bleed proc. And so that was the perfect way to ensure that he was Scarlet Rotted for the second phase and continue like proccing my bleed with the dagger as he was rotting away. And it worked like the second try. And I was so proud of myself. It was probably one of the most memorable fights in all of, like, it's probably my favorite fight in the game, or like the favorite experienced fight in the game because of that. I really loved figuring out like that. Like to me, like that's really fun. Like that's really satisfying. Getting this really difficult boss fight, probably something you're not prepared for, and having like this plethora of tools at your disposal to really figure out a unique way to your build to actually combat and fight the boss. And I wish more fights were like that in Elden Ring or in Dark Souls in general. I wish more fights allowed for that kind of strategic gameplay so that you could like figure out these unique alternative strategies to the game. And I do think that Elden Ring actualizes that a lot better than Dark Souls. Like that is like, and that's because of the spirit summons, right? The spirit summons allow you to de-aggro the boss from yourself and allow you to come up with some unique strategies that allow you to defeat the boss. And so I was super proud of that fight. Definitely my favorite fight from my base game and first playthrough. I like the Radahn fight as well, really fun. But so yeah, like that was such a really good, like I can't get over how enjoyable that fight was. It was so much fun. So yeah, that was the first playthrough. But like I was mentioning earlier, I do feel like the game did not deviate enough from my likings from the Souls combat. And unfortunately, they did overtune some of the boss fights. And even some of the enemies for the typical Souls combat. Like the best example in my opinion is the existence of I think it's the Revenant or something. They're the creatures with multiple hands, and they can come at you with just a super amount of like swiping, and there's no amount of rolling that you can do to really get away from it. You have to like have a tower shield and block the whole combo, or you're just gonna take damage. Like there's almost nothing that you can do about it. And it's like, that doesn't feel appropriately designed for the melee combat of the game. And maybe one could argue that the game's not designed for pure melee. Like, I would argue that the base vanilla game is not designed for like pure melee combo stuff. Like, it's designed for you to, you know, take advantage of like spells and abilities in order to overcome a lot of these really difficult trials. And that's why my first playthrough was a lot more enjoyable. Because of that, I feel, is I was able to take advantage of like my kind of toolbox of spells to deal with a variety of situations. However, that changes when we get into modding. So I do want to bring up the kind of main reason I wanted to talk about Elden Ring was because I started modding the game. So I beat the game. It took me about 200 hours. I loved the adventure. So Freya River was a really fun time. Probably one of my favorite like visually designed areas in all of gaming. Like I loved it. The ceiling, the cave ceiling becoming like looking like a night sky. Stumbling into later sections of the game where you kind of go from like underground section to underground section to underground section. Like that was so much fun. Nokron City was really fucking cool. I really enjoyed those like underground sections. And then my favorite above ground section is definitely the capital. Capital is one of the most well-designed levels that I've seen. I really enjoyed like the vertical, like it was really cool to see them finally like taking advantage of like the verticality added to the game from like the jump buttons and stuff. Obviously the jump doesn't do a whole lot to the game because it's just a dinky little jump, but they were able to design the capital very well around the fact, or they were able to design the capital exceptionally well around the weaknesses of the jump, and I really love that. It's a really fun area to explore. So there's a lot of that going on in Elden Ring. Like exploration is great. Everything like the snowfields and beyond is a little bit weak. I do like Farum Azula and the tree, Halig tree. Like those are cool areas. I did enjoy them visually. But anything in the snow areas is pretty weak in terms of like in comparison to like the rest of the game. And it was a lot of fun to run around. But on repeated playthroughs, like once you've seen everything, like that fun becomes a little bit, that fun gets a little bit lessened, right? Because you've already seen everything, all of the surprises are gone. So what are you doing? Well, most of the rewards that you get for stuff are pretty, like once you know what the rewards are, a lot of the side content gets washed away. And that's one of the criticisms, right, of the game, is that the side content gets repetitive. And so that's where I like to come in with the modding, you know. And then additionally, the combat is pretty janky when it comes to melee combat, and that can lead to a lot of unfun situations when it comes to replaying the game. And so for me and my friends, first of all, seamless co-op is one of the coolest mods ever invented. I think that it is a fantastic inclusion to the game. I think this should have been the base, I think this should have been the base experience for co-op in this game. Co-oping Elden Ring is I love it. I love co-oping Elden Ring. I look forward to co-oping new content blind with my friends. I really wish that like that was something that I could have done or knew about at least, or maybe waited a little bit and done it blind. So like co-oping the game blind would have been so much fun, like just stumbling upon areas and all that. So like I love this mod. This is definitely something that I feel like should have been included in the base game. Co-oping seamlessly, as the name of the mod suggests, seamless co-op. It's just a fantastic change. You know, don't have to worry about dumb invaders. I get to have jolly cooperation and just have a good time. It's a really fun time. And the game's not even that crazy. Like the co-op mod makes things harder, you know, for having more people. And there's like a lot of really crazy situations where there's like just wars and like infinite enemies going on. So like it's really fun. And then we also usually add in the randomizers. So I'm a big fan of item randomizers. It kind of, to me, it makes me feel like new playthroughs are like a roguelike, and I get to go through like different caves, try to find different weapons to, you know, add to the pool of weaponry. All of the side content becomes actually part of, or like it becomes rewarding to do side content because you might stumble upon a super unique weapon, or you might stumble upon like an important key item, and all of that jazz. Really fun randomizer. The enemy randomizer, of course, is also super fun. Me and my friend have done that as well, making all of the different enemies randomized between themselves. And we also have, you can also turn all of the wildlife into enemies, and it just makes for some fun, super fun, chaotic playthroughs of the game and whatnot. And then the final mod that we usually add is called the Sword Mastery mod. And basically, this is a mod that overhauls the melee combat of the game. Melee combat, like I said, is a little lacking for me and for me personally. And this mod adds in deflections. So similar to Sekiro, you get Sekiro deflections. And it makes it so that all of the weapons have unique combo chains. You'll probably notice from like the footage if you're watching the video, like my weapons are doing crazy things. Like I'm doing combos and like deflecting and, you know, dodging is a lot faster. Like I'm doing all of that kind of stuff. And it makes the melee combat like so much better. Like it's so much fun to jump in, and it's not hard, or it doesn't remove the difficulty. Like it's really hard. The mod creators sped the game up a little bit, so like it's actually really tricky, you know, for some of the boss fights and some of the enemies. They're much faster, and so it's like this really just fun way to play the game. The combos, like being able to kind of have some skill expression there when it comes to melee combat. It's just so much fun, and it adds, like, when you have like your friend involved and you have a huge enemy randomizer, just adding a bunch of chaos. Some of the most fun Elden Ring experiences I've ever had. Some of the most fun like Souls-like experiences I've ever had in gaming. For me, like normally Elden Ring is a little bit below Dark Souls 1 for me, because my favorite one is Sekiro, then Dark Souls, Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1 is very nostalgic for me. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And then it goes Elden Ring, and then kind of goes from there. But Elden Ring modded does overtake Dark Souls 1 for me because of like just all of the shenanigans that you can do. So I really recommend you check out the mods, especially Seamless Co-op. If you're someone who's playing on PC and been frustrated at the summon sign systems, Seamless Co-op will be your best friend. Highly recommend it. You get to run through with your horse. You know, both players get to keep their horse. Both players progress their world state at the same time. So like if both of you guys defeat Godric, for example, and get the Great Rune, both of you get Godric defeated and get the Great Rune. So it's like it's just a must. Like it's unreal to me that this is a mod and not like an option in the base game. So yeah, that's kind of my Elden Ring experience. I spent a little long on it, but it is Elden Ring. It's a big game. Just kind of wanted to throw those out there. I mostly wanted to talk about the modding, but it's pretty self-explanatory. If you've been looking for like a really cool combat overhaul mod, recommend Sword Mastery a lot. And I definitely think that you should check out, those 3 mods that I suggested. So moving on to Sekiro. I played Sekiro finally. Sekiro has definitely been one of my favorite gaming experiences of all time. It is now in my top 5 all-time favorite games. I was genuinely surprised how fun that game was. When I talked a little bit earlier about Lost Ark actualizing combat fantasies, Sekiro, the top king of actualizing a combat fantasy. You feel, it's a meme at this point. You feel like you're Spider-Man. You feel like the shinobi badass ninja samurai that Wolf is. Like, you are the one who is coming up with the strategies, coming up with the swordplay, overcoming your opponents, outplaying your opponents. It just feels so rewarding to succeed and accomplish and, do well in Sekiro. Like, you just feel like it was you. It was pretty much all you. You see these like awesome badass sword fights between people, all of these badass sword fights between, you know, top level samurai and ninjas, and you're part of it. You are the, you know, you are the aggressor. You get to truly feel like what you just played through was a high level, like super awesome anime ninja fight. Like you're doing it, and it's so much fun. The combat fantasy is so well actualized. The animations, the sound design, the combat design, like all of it just blends together into this fantastic combat system that truly feels, you know, as the meme suggests, it feels like you're the combat, it feels like you're the badass ninja samurai that the game tells you are. And so I played through Sekiro, and I obviously knew it was good. You know, it's a Souls game, or it's a FromSoft game. Lots of people have been hyping it up. It won Game of the Year. And so it's like, I knew it was going to be a good game, but I was absolutely blown away by Sekiro. Like, I came in, I was enjoying like the first stuff, and I was enjoying everything. And that's not even just like the combat, but like the movement tools, the movement capabilities of the game. I wish more movement, like FromSoft needs to do this again. Like, I want better movement in these FromSoft games. Like the ability to just grapple everywhere, to jump, to double jump, to, you know, wall climb, like wall cling, and all of these things. Like, they just blended together to make me feel like I was, you know, I was doing so much awesome things as a ninja. You know, you get these executions from the air, you know, get these cool, badass aerial executions, Spider-Man yourself away, you know, use all of these tools as a shinobi to kind of, you know, be this very tactical and elusive character that people just can't catch. It just all comes together perfectly for just this wonderful, like, fantasy of being this shinobi warrior. And it's really cool. The only criticism for Sekiro that I can immediately that I can immediately warrant or kind of spout off the top of my head is the stealth system is a little underwhelming, to say the least. You know, it's rather basic, you know, the stealth system in general, and that's probably the only thing. It's not that bad either. Like, it's not a terrible stealth system, but it is a little basic, a little underwhelming, which could sometimes break the fantasy. But honestly, I was just having a blast with every other part of the game that I was not really dwelling too much on the fact that the stealth system was a little lacking. And so I had so much fun playing through it. It was a wonderfully, like, my expectations were already high, and I was so happy that they blew it away, like that my expectations were blown out of the water. It was just so much fun to play through. Sekiro, by the way, is my game of 2022, my game of the year for 2022. I know obviously it won Game of the Year when it released, you know, on its release day, but I didn't play it until 2022. So my personal Game of the Year in 2022 was Sekiro. It was so much fun. I had a blast playing through all of it. I do want to go back to it at some point and like complete it and like get all the achievements and stuff. But like all of the combat, all of the movements, just like it's just so much fun to play. So much fun to play. And I recommend it. If you haven't played Sekiro yet, please go play Sekiro. You do yourself a favor. It is so much fun. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It was just a blast. All right, so finally, we're gonna wrap up with our final months of December. So essentially, I played 3 whole games in December that I want to like a couple of them I want to mention, and then the big one that I want to talk about, or not December, but November through December. So I played Slay the Spire. I bought Slay the Spire and played Slay the Spire. Yu-Gi-Oh is my favorite card game. Yu-Gi-Oh fan, passionate Yu-Gi-Oh fan becomes addicted to roguelike card game. Who knew? Who would have guessed, So I recommend Slay the Spire, especially if you're a card game fan. Really, really fun. Just lots of hours of content. Still lots of time for me, every so often. It's such a fun are a really fun way to just kind of have some side content. Like I'll watch a YouTube video and I'll just pull up do a Slay the Spire run while I'm watching a YouTube video. Power of dual monitors, baby. You know, you get that ability to multitask. And so it's really, really fun because like it's a card game. So like I don't have to fully focus on the card game. I can be like, oh, you know, here's my turn, and then go focus about, you know, take a look back at what I was watching. So I love it. You know, call me addicted. I actually thank Trihex for it. So Trihex, the streamer, he was the one who got me addicted to it. He's been getting all of his subscribers and, you know, chat addicted to it, as far as I can tell. Like he'll just play it randomly when he's watching some of his React content. And I finally decided to pick it up while it was on the winter sale. It was on the Steam winter sale, so I finally decided to pick it up and don't regret it at all. Definitely recommend it. It's really fun. So that's just kind of like a smaller one that I want to talk about. I did play Pokemon. I picked up the new Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I really enjoyed them. Definitely enjoyed them. I've been enjoying them so far. Obviously, you know, the same criticisms that most people have already warranted at the game. Especially the big one, obviously, being the performance issues on the Switch. Super terrible performance issues on the Switch. So obviously that was trash, and it's still trash. I don't think they've done a performance update yet, to my knowledge. And could be wrong about that when this video releases. So if they have, maybe at this point it's all fixed. But at least from what I've played so far, still performance issues. And you know, it's a Pokemon game. Like if you either at this point you either like what they're doing or that you don't. I'm glad I was really hoping they brought more things from Arceus. I really liked a lot of the decisions they made in terms of like overall mechanics from Arceus. I kind of hope that they maybe bring a little bit more from Arceus into the mainline series. I really like the idea of not battling every Pokemon you want to catch, and being able to kind of but having these like different tasks that you could do in order to make catching the Pokemon a little easier without only battling them. I think it's really cool. Like you can throw berries to like feed them, and it makes them unaware, or it makes them kind of lower their guard. And there's just a lot of cool, like more realistic ways to catch Pokemon in that regard. Like that kind of makes sense in my opinion. You know, like these are like wild animals, and if you want to catch them and tame them, you have to like do different things. You can't just beat the crap out of them and expect them to always want to, you know, join you or whatever. So I think that would be really cool, especially for like the lower Pokemon, right? Like you get these cute little, you know, squirrels on the ground that you want to catch and train, and you basically gotta almost murder the damn thing if you want to catch it. Obviously, at some point you can get like higher level balls, hit them from behind, and not have to fight them. But I would love to have seen more of that from Arceus. I would have loved to see trainer damage from Arceus. I think that was a really cool idea, where your trainer is actually able to absorb and take damage from enemies, or from the wild Pokemon. Like they can target you and, you know, decide to fight you. I think I wish that, you know, they could still maintain some of that. I think it would have been pretty cool, rather than like, hey, this like wild Donphan is like rolling straight at you, but instead of tackling you, it's going to engage in a fight. It just seems it's like a really jarring transition, because like some of them will run at you with like some kind of, you know, Donphan will roll out at you or something, and then it's like transitions into a fight screen. It's like, what happened to your trainer? Like they just got tackled and there's nothing happening. But other than that, like, I mean, I didn't expect them to take that much from Arceus. I was still happy that they brought over a little bit. The open world stuff from Arceus is part of this now. So, you know, you run around, you see the Pokemon in the wild, you can fight them, you can auto battle them, which is pretty neat. You can catch them, like you can do some pretty cool things. I do wish that they enhanced or spent a little more time with the raid fight. So, there's like a bunch of kind of unique things to Scarlet and Violet that you can do. There's like these Pokemon there's giant Pokemon that you can do fights against and are like these raid battles. The criticism there is I wish they scaled with your level or your average party level, because it's pretty absurd that like you can just go one shot this giant creature because you came back, or you went to a low level area or you went to a higher level area before you went to the low level area. So I think that's a little criticism there. So it's like some of these are ginormous and awesome and just like intimidating creatures, and then you're just like razor leaf, you're dead. So I kind of wish they scaled them a little bit. And then the other thing, like these are just like minor nitpicks, you know. At this point, you know, you either enjoy it, like I said, you either enjoy it or you don't. I still have a good time with it. I still think it's a fun game. I still think it's enjoyable to play. Obviously I have some nostalgia for the series, but it's still just kind of this like chill. It's just chill mode, you know. He's like, I want to go catch some Pokemon today. I'm gonna play like an hour Pokemon on my, you know, pull out my Switch handheld mode and just play like an hour Pokemon. So yeah, like it's just like this chill experience. But the one thing that I did want to bring up here real quick is the base raids. So the new kind of Team Rocket of this game, I think it's called Team Star, and the way that you handle Team Star is you straight up just start, you just actually go invade their bases. They have like bases around the world, like their base of operations, and you just straight up infiltrate them. Like you just, or not infiltrate, but like you straight up actually like siege them. And basically the way that it works is once you enter that location, you throw out 3 of your Pokemon and they throw out all of theirs, and you have to just kind of, it sounds intimidating. It's like, it sounds like this really cool event where you're like gonna have to strategize, but in actuality they just kind of have their own little zones, and you just like tell your Pokemon to go to those zones and hope that they win. Most of the time they do win. And then after you've killed enough of their Pokemon, then the big base or the big team leader comes out and you have to fight them in a normal Pokemon battle. And it's like, I kind of wish that was expanded on, because that was a really cool idea in my opinion. I really think that would be pretty cool to have like an actual like kind of RTS style strategy mini game inside of the Pokemon, because like that's kind of what I feel like some Pokemon battles would, you know, evolve into. It's like, why should I not send out all of my Pokemon and just annihilate people or something? You know what I mean? Like, why do we have to keep it to a 1v1? I know there's like some rules, like if you're fighting a gym leader, like that makes sense, but like if you're not on good terms with the person you're battling against, it kind of makes sense for them to want to, like, you know, just straight up, I guess in a way, murder you. You know, it's like, I don't like you and we're fighting. I don't like you being here. Obviously not that extreme for kids games, but you know, I think it would be pretty cool to kind of have to figure out a way to implement a more interesting strategy based thing. Because the way that it tends to play out, or at least what it seems like as it plays out, you just kind of run around and beat up these people's Pokemon without really any thought put into it. And so I'd love to see like I'd love to see that expanded upon. But overall, it's Pokemon, you know, you have fun with it or you don't. So I enjoy it still. I plan on streaming it a little bit more. But yeah, so, and then the final game that I played was called Unsighted. Unsighted is this really cool action platformer, or action adventure game. Very Zelda. Some people call it a Zeldavania, which I think is a pretty interesting, like classification or whatever you want to call it. Because it's kind of got some Metroidvania elements where you get new power-ups and you can return to old locations. But it does have a lot of the Zelda formula in it as well, where you have like 5 dungeons with in order to like collect these things in order to get to the end of the game. Each of these dungeons has a dungeon item that helps you progress through the dungeon and allow you to, you know, better explore the open world, or the world. So like you can kind of see some of the Zelda and the Metroidvania kind of put together, so Zeldavania. The combat isn't as the combat's somewhat basic in this game, but it's a really fun combat system. There's a little bit of customization. You get like guns, you get axes, and you get swords, and you can do some pretty cool things here. The only downside, or not downside, but the only small criticism is that parrying is actually broken. Like, parrying in this game is stupid OP. And you can set up some builds that just one-shot bosses. And so, like, and the parry timing isn't even that challenging. Like, if you're someone familiar with like parrying in like Souls games, then it's actually a very generous parry window. And so if you get good at parrying, you just annihilate things. And so that's kind of like the only small criticism. The final boss is actually somewhat challenging in terms of like moves and attack patterns, but there's a lot of really broken item things you can do. Like, there's these cogs that you can have that boost your defense quite a lot, and there's like revive cogs that make it so that you, instead of dying, you basically, it's kind of like a fairy in a bottle from Zelda. Like, you just, instead of dying, you get the fairy to revive you, and that's what the cog does as a revive cog. And so, like, you get a lot of really powerful things that you can eventually acquire that make, you know, you're gonna, if you abuse every one of those things, then the final boss becomes pretty simple. But if you're like fighting it, you know, without a lot of those, it's actually a pretty tough fight. Really fun fight though. I really enjoyed it. Really fun game. There's actually movement tech as well, because your character has a lot of mobility, especially once you get these a really early game item called the high jump boots. You can like wall jump. You can do like all kinds of really cool wall jumping techniques. And there's even a lot of sequence breaking in the game. The game even encourages it for some of the like later playthroughs, as there's ways for you to, like, there's achievements for speedrunning. There's actually a full speedrun achievement where it's like beat the game in under this time. There's like skip achievements where, you know, if you do certain things that are kind of intended to skip the game. There's an reverse boss order achievement where it's like you got to beat all of the bosses in the reverse order, which is a very common speedrun category for games that have a lot of sequence breaks. Like, there's a Super Metroid category for reverse boss order, where you fight Ridley first, and then you go up to, then you progress yourself to the other side of the spectrum. And so it's a really fun game, really cool. I highly recommend playing it. I think it's 25 base, and then I think I bought it for I bought it for the base price because I played the demo and had a lot of fun with it. And then I didn't play the demo for a year, which is kind of amusing and ironic, but that's kind of what happened with me. But I think it was on like sale for the summer or winter sale for like $10 or $15. So if you spot it on a sale, I highly recommend it. I want more people to play it. It looks like a really fun game to speedrun too. So like I might, there's kind of some like my old speedrunner, like internal speedrunning mind is like kind of getting, like, that itch is starting to show up, like that spark where it's like, hi, you found a cool speed game. I want to speedrun it a little bit, but I definitely want people to play it. It's so much fun. It's really just a really enjoyable game to just kind of play through. There's even a couple of roguelike side games where you can it's like the boss rush mode in the game is actually a roguelike where you get money, or you have to like each time you defeat a boss, you like get a new weapon or a new power up as you kind of progress through it. So it's pretty interesting. And then there's like a dungeon roguelike mode where you actually play through like stages of each level, and you have to like find power-ups and stuff throughout. So those are pretty cool, pretty interesting. Like, there's obviously achievements to beat those. And you can set it on permadeath or whatever. So if you die in the roguelike, you get respawned and have to start it over, just like a roguelike. Like, it was really cool. I really enjoy the game. I want more people to play it, so I'm gonna say, like, you know, please go buy the game and play it. But yeah, I don't know if I have too much more. It's also co-op, or 2 players. It's not online co-op unless you use the remote play from Steam, which I did with my friend for a little bit, and it was actually not too bad. It wasn't too bad. There is some precise button inputting at times, so like it can occasionally be frustrating for the person coming in to remote play and like having that lag. But for the most part, it's just really cool. I really like that there's a co-op feature in the game. I really wish that there'd be more games like this that has those kind of co-op features and whatnot. So yeah, that kind of wraps up pretty much everything that I wanted to discuss for today's video. Just wanted to touch on all those games. Obviously, I ranted on quite much, a lot longer for some games than others, but just wanted to get those out there. Hopefully you guys were able to have a good time with this game, have a good time with this video. My throat's starting to get a little raspy because I'm still recovering from that cold that I mentioned. So I'm gonna go get some water, go get a drink, and just kind of chillax, and then edit this video this week and kind of see what goes on. I do have a video project coming soon, so be on the lookouts for that. Very excited for this one. I'm really hoping this project turns out well, so please be on the lookout for that. Subscribe, all that stuff, if you're interested. It's about God of War, as a little spoiler or a little kind of teaser. So if that sounds interesting, please check it out. And without further ado, I think we're just gonna go ahead and sign off here. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.